So Yitzhak, thank you so much for joining me today. We're here at Microsoft Ignite 2025. So many different events going on, so many people from Microsoft on site and whatnot. So for those of you, those out there that may not know you, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Dennis, for having me. I'm super excited to be here at Ignite and chatting with you. My name is Yitzhak Kesselman. I lead Fabric Real-Time Intelligence and Fabric IQ at Microsoft. Super excited to be here and share the story of what we're announcing. Yeah. But also a bit about myself. I've been with Microsoft for more than 10 years. I was also on the Power BI team when it started, so really privileged to be here and kind of sharing the evolution of the product from Power BI to Fabric and the new stuff that we are releasing.
Okay, well, thank you. That's a very interesting title, Real-Time Intelligence, and I think that brings up a lot of different ideas, use cases in people's minds. What do you think, just kind of talking on a meta level, what do you think is one of the most common things or misconceptions that people get wrong when it comes to that?
Yeah, and when we choose the name, there was a lot of debate and energy about the name.
Right? Okay.
Because when people think about real-time, there's different reactions. For some people, real-time is milliseconds. For some people, I heard, for me, real-time is 15 minutes.
Sure,
it's real-time for me. And when we speak about real-time, we really think about maybe more precisely an event-driven architecture. When an event happens, I want to be able to act on it. I want to make a decision when it happens. I don't want to wait an hour or 2 hours. When something happens, I want to be able to proactively understand the overall impact and drive action and really improve my business efficiencies of my company. Mm-hmm. And I can share there are multiple examples there. Even today I'm having a session with 2 customers there, and one of the customers is Apollo Hospitals, which I find it really great use case. I find it very relatable, personally. They're the largest hospital chain out of Asia. They have 70 plus hospitals. They're touching more than 150 million of patients. And they were on the phase of modernization of their data stack. They started thinking, okay, I want to improve my operations, I want to improve my business, and they shifted their mind from this kind of just analytics, because they're speaking about operations. Hey, I want to have an event-driven architecture. So for example, when the patient being discharged, I want immediately take an action and clean the bed and make it ready for the next patients. And that goes from operational scenarios in the kind of healthcare kind of business directly on the kind of bed maintenance and stuff, but also they use it for ICUs, how they can understand the medical conditions being changed, and they were able to improve also they reduced the amount of code blues in the ICUs because they implemented it, because the shift from analytical to operational, the ability to take an action when the event happens, instead of waiting for somebody will look at the report after an hour or 2, and that's where we're building here.
Okay, so you're talking about a use case, and I'm sure most of your use cases have some very, very complex data pipelines behind them. What are some of the impacts that you anticipate that AI is going to have on data pipelines? It seems like that would be a topic that you would also track closely.
Yeah, data quality, data pipelines, integration, that's always the topic.
Sure.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Sure.
And actually what real-time intelligence allows, and that was kind of our philosophy, is really to make sure that we can easily bring data in. So we created several dozens of connectors, and we're adding new connectors every week, every month, to make it very easily and seamlessly to bring your data in. So no matter where your data is, it's in Microsoft ecosystem, it's in other clouds on GCP or in AWS or other open source formats, make it very easy with few clicks of a button to bring this data in. And it makes a lot of democratization of really unlocking the value for the business users. So it reduces the bottleneck on the central IT to bring all those data sources. But then the another thing that we added in real-time intelligence is the real-time hub, kind of the central place where you can find all those streams of data. Because today in organizations, many of those streams are being locked in different silos. You don't have the visibility. Somebody brought this in, the other department doesn't know about it. And we provide with proper governance and observability this data to other business users. And from there, it's very easy for business users to take this data and drive actions and automation, and even drive AI to help with that. But on the quality aspects of it, it's interesting that you're asking, because we have also several customers that use real-time intelligence itself to drive data quality. So they implemented real-time intelligence on those pipelines to really monitor, understand the data quality, and take an action when they see something is not happening right, instead of waiting until they see the underlying result down the pipeline on the analytical, let's say Power BI report, that the data is wrong. So there are two flavors of that.
Okay, interesting. So I imagine that a lot of the components you just mentioned are going to be related to the Fabric IQ products that we're hearing a lot about.
So so I can talk a bit more about the components. The components that I'm sharing, they're part of real-time intelligence, but they also help and feed with Fabric IQ. So maybe a bit about what's Fabric IQ and what's the idea behind it. Today we're in the era of AI. Everybody speaks AI. Sure, you speak more than many others. And my goal and mission is to make it really tangible, make it productive for the organizations, for the people that want to use AI. And the big challenge that we have with AI is data. And I would say even more than data. Of course, data is the fuel for AI. You need to make sure that you have the right data to run AI on top of it. But just the batch data is not enough. You need to make sure that you have real-time data, streaming data, to make sure that your agents can operate and act on the data that is relevant and recent. Otherwise, there is latency, there's delays, and there is not much value there. But more than that, there's like multiple flavors of data, because it's not just streaming or batch. You have also geospatial data, you have relational data. And if you think about like complex organization, how they think about in concepts of business concepts, they think about entities. So if you think in examples of like aviation and airlines, you have different entities, like you have an airplane, you have passengers, you have baggage, and all those entities have different properties. They have like measures, like the model of the airplane, the flight number, but they have also time series data, like what's the velocity, what's the tire pressure, for example. But they have also geospatial data, what's the location of the airplane. But those entities are also rich entities. Those entities have also ability to drive actions. There's actions that you can apply, like I want to assign a crew to a flight, I want to offload baggage. And all those entities are interconnected. The airplane is connected to the passengers, connected to the baggage, connected to the crew. And all those relationships are really represent how people think about the business. It goes not just static entities, it goes into entities that have relations between them. Those entities have actions, they have rules, they have policies, they have goals. And that's what we are bringing with Fabric IQ, the ability to have this kind of smart and rich semantic layering that we call ontology, that goes beyond the measures of the analytical space into operations. And once you have this ontology, you can really feed it into AI. So there is an integration with Foundry IQ that was also announced yesterday at Ignite. And the integration between Foundry IQ and Fabric IQ is really that. Enable the pro developers to build those agents using this rich semantic layer, and that makes those agents much, much more precise. They're working on the business context, they understand what action they should take, they understand what rules they should monitor, instead of going into the underlying schema and tables that are there today. And if you go in schema and tables, there are like 500 different tables that have airplane. Which one of those? What action should I take? Yes, they're MCP servers, but I know that I want to offload a passenger from a flight, I want to reassign a flight. So that's how we are aiming to make AI much more precise, much more productive, much more tangible for our customers.
Very interesting. So you're referencing the keynote from yesterday. Another item we've kind of heard as a theme is about how a lot of the ability to build agents is kind of being moved forward to like the frontline employees, empowering them to do a little bit more with data, a little bit more with agents. What's going to be the role of Fabric IQ in that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I personally very relate to that. As a sharing, I was on the Power BI team when it started, and that's kind of our philosophy. That's my personal philosophy.
So I'm asking the right guy.
Yeah, the right guy. No, like I really relate to that.
Okay.
Our goal is really to democratize and empower the people that know the business to take the action, instead of the people in the IT that know the technical aspects, but they don't know the business. And that was the philosophy behind Power BI. That's the philosophy behind Fabric and real-time intelligence, and that's what we're aiming to do with Fabric IQ as well. there's a full spectrum of agents, as was shared yesterday. There's agents that are for pro developers in Foundry. There's agents that could be built by citizen developers in Copilot Studio. And there's out-of-the-box agents that we provide in Fabric, like data agents that are virtual analysts. And the stuff that we announced yesterday was also operations agents in Fabric. And I will share a bit more about that because I think there is novelty there. But the common across all of them, all of those types of agents work on top of FabricQ. So all of them are being fed by this ontology as part of FabricQ. So they are much more precise, they're much more accurate. It's much more easier to create those agents because you need to provide much less instructions, and that reduces the hallucinations of those agents. Okay. So speaking of kind of democratization, providing out-of-the-box capabilities, so the announcements of operations agents in Fabric is something that I personally very excited about it, because when we think about operations, we want to make sure that we empower our teams and we able to augment them with skills that make them do more with less. An operations agent can think of them as virtual team members. Those team members monitor the data, look at the data, they're getting instructions as a new team member would onboard the team. They will follow those instructions, but they also get goals, and they get actions, they get rules. And all of this is part of the Fabric IQ. And when you create this operations agent and you deploy it to monitor the data, they understand what they need to monitor, they understand the context and the connections between different types of data, but they also can find insights, anomalies, or based on the static rules that were provided, and now they can generate actions. They can proactively find stuff 24/7, recommend and take actions, of course with human approval, but sometimes they can take an action that the human approves upfront. Hey, this remediation action, you can take it even without human approval. So this kind of democratization and empowerment of the operations team, that's something that we just announced yesterday.
And also I know this might not be directly under your purview, but I also like the Agent 365 that's going to help you monitor all of these. Correct. What should be a larger number of agents out there.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we're seeing, and they're going to be hundreds and thousands of agents.
Sure, yeah, it's gonna go up right away.
It's gonna go up right away, and then the question like how you monitor them, how you analyze them, how you understand how they're performing, as you would do with your team members, how you know how they're performing. And that's something which is super important, that's critical, and that really shows that AI is not a hype, it's real. We're hearing it from customers, we're hearing it from software developer partners that build those solutions, because we're seeing a growth and demand with multi-agentic world, with organizations that are starting to have dozens and hundreds and thousands of agents, and then the question is like, how going to monitor it? How can understand what goes there?
Yeah, and you briefly touched upon governance, and obviously that's going to be critical for enterprise adoption.
Yeah, and that's a critical part, because as with humans, we need to make sure that you can audit it, you can understand the actions that were taken, you can understand when something is wrong and you want to take action.
Audit trails.
What action, what the decision was, what was the thinking process. And that's relevant for all agents, and that's something that we provide as Agent 360, and also as part of real-time intelligence, Fabric IQ, that's something that is available to do, and we have even some customers and partners that shared earlier in my session today, that they build their platform to provide those capabilities for their customers as well on top of Fabric IQ.
So I'm curious, you mentioned you have a long career, and obviously right now, because of this rollout, you're talking to a lot of customers, hearing a lot of use cases, pain points. Have you come across a really interesting use case that even surprised you? Something where you're like, oh, wow, I hadn't come across that. Is there anything surprising, that sticks in your mind?
I'm sure about surprising. I enjoy every customer conversation. Every customer is interesting, and I learn from every interactions. But the interesting part that I would say is how everyone thinks about how they can make the world a better place, how they can improve the value for their customers, how they can apply the technology to make the world a better place. And that's something that I'm excited. People are thinking bigger and ambitious. That's something that's really AI accelerated. So I'm really proud of that.
Awesome. And I also like to close with a little bit more of a fun question. Try to get to know a little bit of the people behind these products. If I were to give you a magic microphone and the entire world has to listen to you for 5 minutes, but 5 minutes only, what would you say?
Make the world a better place. I don't need 5 minutes.
That's not even 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's my philosophy.
Well, great. Any closing thoughts on your side for our audience?
No, I'm super excited about the work that Microsoft does really to empower people across the world. Super excited about this amazing conference. There's like 15,000 people as far as I know. It's like very crowded.
And many more online.
Yeah, there's like hundreds of thousands online. Super excited. Really excited about the feedback that we're hearing from customers and their scenarios and use cases. And we appreciate that feedback. So if you have feedback, please reach out. We're here, we're listening, and that's how we build the product. That's the philosophy behind how we're building those products.
Okay, well, if you want to give me your phone number, I'd be happy to include it in the video, and people can call you directly.
So go to Fabric Ideas, that's how we get their feedback.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you so much.
Thank you.